Contrary to some revisionist historians, the lead up to The Last Jedi was filled with hype.
Nobody's denying that. Pretty much everybody was excited for this movie, including me, unfortunately, but being an impressionable young kid back then, I was just pretty much like your average consumer.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
Oh yeah, I have never heard anybody try to deny the fact that they weren't excited at least a little bit for this movie, so I think you're the one that's being the revisionist here. Well, anyway, hey guys and welcome back. Yeah, I'm responding to the Goldman again. First time was on the Paramount Halo show, and now The Last Jedi. And since this video is over an hour long and I've already made a video on The Last Jedi before, I'm just going to kind of just cherry pick the parts that I want to respond to, because he has a lot of really bad defenses for this movie, so I'm kind of just trying to pick the ones that I haven't responded to in my Cosmonaut response, so grab some more green milk, because this is going to be a really bad video.
The Last Jedi. This movie has plenty of subversions, but I'm gonna focus on the main two, and why I think one was done effectively, and why one left a lot to be desired. I love the decision to make Rey's parents nobodies. And by the way, for the sake of this argument, I'm going to ignore the fact that in The Rise of Skywalker, they completely undid this moment. The trope that is being subverted here is that the main Force user has to be related to someone else who is strong with the Force. Kylo Ren is the son of Leia, who is strong with the Force, and that's why he's strong. Luke Skywalker was the son of Darth Vader, who is strong in the Force, and that's why he's strong. Anakin is literally the son of the Force, which is why he is so strong. So the expectation is that Rey is the daughter of someone strong with the Force. But nope, Rey is just the daughter of some random people. The message that is sent here is one of democratizing the Force. You don't need to come from somewhere special to be special yourself. Star Wars fans have been trained to believe that you must be someone's son or daughter to be strong in the Force. But throughout all of Star Wars history, Jedi were not allowed to have kids. So in a way, everyone who was a Jedi came from nowhere. So having Rey just be nobody was a reminder of that, and it ties into Rey's story nicely, which I'll talk about in a bit. This is a good example of subverting expectations.
Yeah, no. This is nothing new, as you've already said. Rey being a nobody doesn't make sense because she's way too powerful with the Force for someone who's had no training or experience. She didn't even know that the Force is real, and the next day she beats a guy who is basically a Sith in a fight. I know you tried to counter that later on in the video, so we're getting there. I'm not going to get pedantic on this point, since I already went into depth on it with my Cosmonaut response, so watch that if you want to see my point.
Rey, I believe, is the single most misunderstood character in the Star Wars franchise. Most people love to focus on Rey's external struggles or lack thereof. As the protagonist of a Star Wars trilogy, it's only fair to compare her to her counterparts in Luke and Anakin. Luke and Anakin both struggled immensely externally, and what I mean by externally are physical obstacles that they had to overcome. Anakin had to finish the pod race, Anakin got his arm chopped off, Anakin got burned alive, Luke had to blow up the Death Star, Luke got his ass handed to him by Vader and lost a hand, and Luke had to defeat Vader and turn him back to the light side. Of course, I'm not saying that these characters had no internal struggles. There's probably no one who struggled more internally than Anakin did. My point is that these characters struggled externally on numerous occasions, while with Rey, at least in these first two movies, she doesn't. I'm not going to cover her story again from The Force Awakens. You can watch my whole 57-minute video on that if you'd like, but a main point I had in that video is that Rey's struggles are pretty much all internal, and that continues in The Last Jedi.
But that's a problem. Best written protagonists tend to have both internal and external problems which feed into each other. They come hand in hand essentially. By focusing solely on one is an issue for a main protagonist because it means it's hard to relate to them. Humans face both types of struggles in real life, so naturally characters in pretty much any story face them too. Rey not having any external issues is a problem because she's just able to do anything that the plot demands it, even when it makes no sense. Such as her flying the Millennium Falcon expertly even though she's had no starship piloting experience whatsoever. Or being able to operate that water skiff thing even though she grew up on a desert planet. And there are just so many other examples. Her lack of struggles or weakness failed to ground her in a way that is relatable to the audience, and so thus she comes across as unbelievable.
From a simple plot perspective, Rey doesn't do that much in this movie. She gets rejected by Luke, she talks to Kylo and Luke a couple of times, she leaves Luke to turn Kylo, she gets interrogated by Snoke but saved by Kylo, she fights off some guards, she fails to turn Kylo back to the light side, she lifts some rocks, and that's her story. So Rey has pretty much no external struggles, and I believe that is the biggest reason why people call her a Mary Sue, because she doesn't struggle all that much defeating Kylo. She doesn't struggle all that much in her Force training. She does struggle against Snoke, but she doesn't struggle fighting the guards, and she doesn't struggle lifting rocks. But as I said earlier, 99% of Rey's struggles are all internal. If you were to really examine Rey as an individual human being and not as a potential Jedi, Rey is one of the most wildly insecure people in the Star Wars galaxy. I would argue her insecurity rivals that of Anakin's. In the first two movies, Rey in her heart of hearts wants one thing, and that is belonging. In The Force Awakens, she hides away on Jakku because she only thinks her parents can give her the belonging she seeks. She learns that isn't true and she moves on to find Luke. In this movie, Rey is constantly seeking external validation. She looks to Luke for answers about her place in the galaxy, she literally says as much, and then she looks to Kylo. Have you ever met those girls who seem to hop from one boyfriend to another and they're afraid to be single? Well, that's pretty much Rey minus the boyfriend part. Rey is an incredibly dependent person. She's always looking to other people to find answers. In The Force Awakens, she grew attached to Han rather quickly. She followed him around and often sought his approval. And The Last Jedi begins the same way, with her seeking Luke's approval, but she doesn't get it. Without someone else's approval and guidance, she's lost. And this is the core of what Rey's arc is in this movie. Rey wants belonging. She wants answers about her place in the galaxy. But what she needs to realize is that she's not going to get the answers she wants from other people. Only she can define what her place is in the galaxy, and once that happens, then she can find belonging.
Well, I do think it's a good starting point for her character development. The problem is that her insecurities never lead to any negative consequences. When she runs away after Moss tells her that her parents are never coming back, it doesn't lead to anything bad. You might try to say that it leads her to be captured by Kylo Ren, but she manages to stop him from interrogating her and manages to read his mind and escapes on her own. And it's the reason Finn decides to help the Resistance. When she tries to rescue Kylo, nothing bad happens to her. Snoke is dead now, and she escapes very easily. This insecurity doesn't lead to any bad outcomes. Rey is never hindered by this flaw, and she manages to succeed, or at the very least get away with anything she does. If this insecurity leads to her being hurt or revealing any information or something like that, you would have a point, but she doesn't, so this flaw is made completely moot. And you even admit this yourself later on.
Just because I love Rey's story, that doesn't mean I think it's perfect. This story suffers from the same issue as The Force Awakens, and it's that Rey never suffers the consequences of her flaws. In a traditional character arc, it's important that your main character suffers some consequences of their flaws to help them grow and change. Luke got mollywomped by Vader, and Anakin nuked his life beyond repair, but Rey doesn't suffer any consequences of her insecurity.
You've completely shot yourself in the foot, but you don't even realize it.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
What a great video essayist you are.
I continue to be baffled that people don't understand Rey's struggle in this trilogy, when Kylo literally spells it out to the audience. Rey says she doesn't understand, and he says, and I quote, "No, your parents threw you away like garbage, but you can't stop needing them. It's your greatest weakness, looking for them everywhere, in Han Solo, and now in Skywalker." This translates to, you should understand how I feel. My parents abandoned me just like you, and just like you, I still need them. It's both of our greatest weaknesses. You used Han Solo as a father figure, and now you do the same with Luke Skywalker. So when you phrase it like that, of course Rey would begin to empathize with Kylo. And after Kylo tells his version of what happened that night at the Jedi Temple, she begins to see him a bit as a victim. So at this point in the story, Rey is someone who is incredibly lonely, she has serious abandonment issues, and she's not getting help from Luke. Who better to go to than someone who is incredibly lonely, someone who has abandonment issues, and someone from his perspective didn't get any help from Luke? Human beings naturally gravitate to those with shared experience. It is hardwired into our DNA.
Yeah, but you don't realize the problem? They literally have to spell it out for you, or otherwise you wouldn't be able to pick it up, because there are no examples from the movies themselves that support this, as I've already gone over. It's just like how the movie needs to spell out the theme of how there's no true good or bad on both sides, even though the movie doesn't provide any concrete examples of this. It just flat out stated for the audience to pick up on it first, instead of the characters, which is very lazy writing.
Tangent. One of the dumbest criticisms of this movie is that Rey is a Mary Sue because she beat Luke in this fight. You are either an idiot if you believe this, or you are so incredibly disingenuous that you ignored what happened. When the two are whacking sticks, Luke is toying with her. He dodges her hits and just casually hits her on the back. Nothing is more disrespectful in a fight than grabbing your opponent's weapon and tossing it to the side. But since Rey grabs a lightsaber, Luke backs off. And this somehow means she won? This is like if Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was fighting Danny DeVito. Of course, The Rock would kick Danny DeVito's ass. But say the two were fighting and then Danny DeVito whipped out a shotgun. I bet you The Rock would back off. This is basically what happened here. So yeah, if you say Rey beat Luke in this duel and she's a Mary Sue because of it, I cannot take you seriously.
Be silent. Keep your full tongue behind your teeth.
Luke should have still been able to beat Rey. Plain and simple. He should be far stronger in the Force. He could have easily beat her with just that. Or that Rey thought to grab the lightsaber first instead of him. This scene's just another example of how this movie goes out of its way to humiliate Luke for no other reason but to just prop up Rey. And to make it seem as though she's better than he is, even though she hasn't had a fraction of the training or experience than what he has.
Rey defeating these guards is another instance of people calling her a Mary Sue. But may I say this, you guys are criminally underrating how big of an advantage it is to have the Force in a fight. Anakin, a 9-year-old boy, was able to win a pod race and destroy the Trade Federation ship because he had the Force. Luke was able to blow up the Death Star with a perfect shot because he had the Force. Rey has the Force, but she's a Mary Sue because she kills 4 guards in a fight while Kylo kills the rest?
Anakin destroying the Federation ship is also a contrivance, considering he shouldn't have even been brought to an active war zone in the first place, or that the Starfighter's autopilot just brought him to the battle, or how ridiculous it is that he managed to be at the right spot and happened to hit the reactor to destroy the vessel. But Luke had help with both Han saving him at the last second from Vader, and Luke lightly using the Force to have a more accurate shot at the hull to destroy the Death Star. And the movie establishes multiple times that he's a very good pilot and a decent gunner. Rey shouldn't have been anywhere near as good with a lightsaber as she should be, and even Kylo, who should be better than her, struggles more during the fight and requires Rey to bail him out. So just add that to the list of Rey's Mary Sue moments.
Up next, we have the mighty Kylo Ren. Now, if there's one thing about the sequels that isn't controversial, it's that Kylo Ren is the best character in The Last Jedi. Kylo is a nuanced villain who is similar yet incredibly unique within the Star Wars universe.
Don't call him mighty, since he lost to a scavenger girl twice. I mean, Adam Driver is definitely one of the best new actors in these movies. I think when people say they like Kylo, more because of his great performance rather than the character himself, since he's so horrifically inconsistent.
Confusingly that Anakin is showing Ben the dark side, and that he's conflicted, which, I mean, that's all Kylo Ren ever is.
You're so right. I feel it again. The pull to the light. It's time to let old things die. I'm being torn apart. I'm gonna turn you to the dark side.
Goes to show how great acting can salvage such a garbage character.
When Kylo killed Han, the act made him more conflicted than ever before. The dark side didn't consume him, guilt did. Han in his final moments let his son know he still loved him by touching his face. This moment ruined Kylo and is the major reason why he lost to Rey in that duel. People can say that Kylo was shot by the bowcaster or that Rey had training with the staff all they want, but the fact that Kylo was this emotionally distracted was the reason Rey beat him. Here's an analogy I'd like to use. If I had to play LeBron James in a one-on-one game of basketball, he would torch me. But if right before the game I murdered all of his kids and his wife right in front of him and then asked him to play, there's a chance I would win, because what person in their right mind would be able to play a sport right after their family was murdered?
Okay, but Sith or just dark side users in general use anger and pain to feel their power. Besides that, he still should have won, even by going with your example. LeBron James would honestly still beat you in a game, even at his lowest point, because even if he tried just a little, he would still beat you even if you tried to give it your all. He's just too good to lose to an amateur, even if he's just phoning it in. The same situation applies here. As you said, Rey pretty much has no training with any actual weapons or the Force, and even if Kylo is as compromised as he claimed, he he should still be able to beat her just with the Force alone, on top of the fact that he was trained by both Snoke and Luke, so he has pretty much everything going for him, but he still lost. Which is a good thing, since he was going to be the main villain after this movie, and having him be beaten twice just makes him look pathetic, to the point he's not enough to carry an entire movie by himself.
Snoke ends up berating him and Kylo is pissed. One aspect of storytelling that I consistently talk about in my videos is active characters. Effective characters are characters that make decisions that reveal who they are. Throughout this movie, Kylo Ren makes decisions that reveal to us who he really is. During the initial attack on the Resistance fleet, Kylo Ren has the chance to murder his mother, but he doesn't. This shows to us that Kylo is not even remotely close to being consumed by the dark side. Now, one aspect of the scene that's mildly confusing is if Kylo knows his mom doesn't die, because he clearly sees her being blown out of the ship, but for the rest of the movie, it's never addressed if he knows she's alive or not. In The Rise of Skywalker, he knows Leia is alive, but it's not clear if he realizes this in The Last Jedi, between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, or if he knew she never died in the first place, because his knowledge on the well-being of his mother definitely matters when during the Battle of Crate, he tells his officers no quarter and no prisoners, implying he's asking them to potentially kill his mother.
Well, this makes your point worse, because we don't even know his full mindset. As I showed for that montage Mahler made, Kylo is so inconsistent with his morals and beliefs, you can't pinpoint any solid, unwavering character traits for him. Well, besides him being an angry man-child, that is.
Moving on from this, let's talk about his relationship with Rey. I kinda touched on a fair amount of this when talking about Rey, but let's look at things from his perspective. Just like Rey, Kylo doesn't understand why they have a Force bond. When they talk for the second time, Kylo is curious if Rey knows what happened to him, because even though Kylo is clearly on the dark side and he acknowledges this, he still believes he is a victim of an attempted murder from Luke. Rey at first has no interest in learning about his past, and she calls him a monster, and Kylo says, "Yes, I am." As I stated before, there is such a feeling of pain in this line. What makes Kylo such a complex character are his reasons for why he is on the dark side. With Anakin, it's pretty clear. He wants to save his wife, and his faith in the Jedi is breaking. With Kylo, it's not so simple. Thinking Luke was trying to kill him is not the sole reason he's on the dark side. It's just the straw that broke the camel's back. Some may say that it's because his parents sent him away to train with Luke, but I don't think that's the entire story. The reason Ben was sent to train with Luke was not simply because Ben had the Force. His parents sensed a growing darkness with him, and they hoped Luke could help him. Throughout his life, Ben always felt everyone saw him as some sort of monster. He felt his parents saw him as a monster. Why else would they send him away? He felt his uncles saw him as a monster. Why else would he try to kill him? I know this doesn't count, but his fellow students in the Kylo Ren comics saw him as a monster too, and now Rey sees him as a monster. I think at some point, Ben just snapped and said, "Everyone keeps calling me a monster? Fine, I'll be a monster." And at its core, that is why Ben Solo became Kylo Ren. So when Kylo Ren says, "Yes, I am," in response to Rey calling him a monster, it's probably because it's not the first time he's felt like someone was calling him a monster.
Well, the reason as to why Luke tried to kill him is beyond contrived, but we're getting to that point. Plus, just by having this belief that you're a monster, so thus you decide to become one, is not exactly very deep. "Oh my god, people don't like me, so thus I'm gonna be evil now," is a very shallow reason to become evil if you ask me. I know some might say I'm being reductive, but honestly, what can you say about Kylo? Outside of Luke's attempted assassination on him, we're barely given any other reason as to why he's on Team Evil now. Compare this to Anakin. He wasn't born and raised with the Jedi principles to indoctrinate him until later on in his life. He lost his mother, caused him to feel weak, and strives to save everyone he cares about. And he disagreed with the Jedi Council on numerous occasions. Had to keep the love of his life a secret, and just when he was starting to feel happy, he's hit with a vision that she's going to die, and the Jedi lack any empathy for him to where Yoda tells him he's just going to have to let her go. That is obviously more complex and developed than what Kylo is. mistake inconsistency with complexity, explaining why you see way too much into him.
Next time they talk is the classic Ben Swallow scene. And may I say here, I'm so glad they didn't make Kylo a bitch. Imagine if when Rey told him to put on a shirt, he's like, okay, I'll put on a shirt just to make you feel more comfortable. That would be such a bitch move. But instead he just stands there and says nothing. What a boss.
Well, he loses to Rey multiple times in these movies, so he kind of is one. Plus, the fact that this happens while Rey is confronting him about Han is really tone-deaf and confusing, showing more that Ryan is trying way too hard to be like Marvel without understanding what used to make it work. Used to.
Yeah, that's what happens when the Red Room gives you an involuntary hysterectomy. They kind of just go in and they rip out all of your reproductive organs. They just get right in there and they chop them all away, everything out.
Okay.
I don't think it's funny.
Kylo tells Rey his truth about the night he destroyed Luke's temple. The reason he does this is because deep down he believes he and Rey have gone through the same thing. When he entered her mind in The Force Awakens, he could feel how lonely she was from her abandonment. Some may look at this movie as Kylo trying to manipulate Rey into joining the dark side, but I don't believe that. Palpatine, for example, didn't care about Anakin. He just wanted Anakin's power. In The Empire Strikes Back, I don't think Vader really cares about Luke yet. That happens in Return of the Jedi. In this movie, Kylo genuinely cares about Rey. He empathizes with her and wants her to join him. As I stated before, people with shared experience gravitate towards each other. Kylo Ren, a man who feels alone, wants someone with shared experience to be with him. This is why he's so willing to open up to her in the hand-touching scene. He tells her she's not alone, and the two proceed to touch hands. This moment right here is probably the most intimate either one has been with another person in their entire life. These are not the eyes of someone who is trying to manipulate someone else.
How would Kylo be more intimate with Rey in just like 2 days, rather than his family that he's known for his entire life? That makes no sense. Unless you're talking about romantic intimacy, which, okay? I heard that Rian Johnson has claimed that the finger-touching scene is the closest thing to sex in Star Wars, which makes me think he hasn't seen the prequels. The Disney movies are honestly way more tame when it comes to stuff like that, besides maybe Andor, that is. Anyway, Rey and Kylo's relationship is rushed and makes no sense. As I said a second ago, they only bond for like 2 days, and whatever reason, that's enough for Rey to want to save him, potentially risking her own life. They never have a scene where they truly open up to each other, or anything that would show Rey any reason why Kylo needs to be saved, or if he's capable of being saved. Contrast this with Return of the Jedi, where Luke has heard who Anakin used to be, and since Luke is a believer of family, as we see in Empire Strikes Back, it makes sense for his character. Something this movie forgets about, but we're diving into that shortly.
The next time the two meet up is right before they confront Snoke. At this moment, I think Kylo knows he needs to kill Snoke, but he has no clue how he's gonna do it. So Snoke proceeds to interrogate Rey, and you know what's a detail I noticed years after this movie came out? After Snoke tosses Rey to the ground and Kylo's lightsaber lands in front of him spinning, that's when he realizes how he was gonna kill Snoke. He sees the spinning lightsaber on the ground, and right after that, he happens to look directly at Snoke. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but this was such an awesome detail I hadn't noticed before.
Once again, you're looking way too much into this. Plus, it's really convenient that Snoke so happened to put the lightsaber at the perfect place for Kylo to twist it, as well as Snoke not noticing Kylo doing it either. Despite that, we've already seen him being really powerful throughout the whole movie up to this point, but who cares about consistency?
Even though I don't think Kylo is genuinely trying to manipulate Rey and he does care about her, it's still important to remember that Kylo is on the dark side. When Kylo tells Rey the truth about her parents and tells her she's nothing but not to him, I see that as a gaslight. He's playing into Rey's biggest insecurities here. She sees herself as nothing because her parents are no one. So Kylo is telling her this and basically saying, I'm the only one who sees you as something special, so join me. May I just say this? Adam Driver's acting here may be some of the best acting in the entire franchise. The delivery of please to her is filled with innocence and this desperate need for her. There's a reason why Martin Scorsese said Adam Driver is the best actor of his generation. Isn't that kind of crazy that we got one of the best working actors alive to be the main villain in a Star Wars trilogy? That's absolutely nuts.
Star Wars has always had some of the best actors. The prequels had Christopher Lee, who's considered one of the best actors of all time. Which is true. Plus, he was also knighted, which makes him doubly a Chad. I swear, I doubt we're ever going to have an actor that's as based as him in a long time. Perhaps even ever. Plus, the originals had Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing, both of whom were highly revered actors for their time, so I wouldn't consider this anything new. Not that this on Adam Driver, he's also awesome, but still.
People look at Kylo here as someone who is fully consumed with the dark side, and I disagree. Throughout this trilogy up to this point, how many times has Kylo said things that he knows aren't completely true? He says he'll destroy Rey, but we all know that's not gonna happen. We just saw him pour his heart to her. A great way to show a character is conflicted is when their actions don't match their words.
You hear that, guys? If a character's actions don't match up with their words, that means they're conflicted. So does that mean Luke's conflicted when he tries to kill Ben? That is such a stupid thing for you to say. Don't you ever proofread your scripts? I assume you do, and if that's the case, peer editing and criticism is a thing, so you might need to consider that next time you make a video, because this is awful.
Now, the moment you guys have been waiting for. It is time we discuss Luke Skywalker. The narrative decision Rian Johnson took with this character is the single most controversial thing that Disney has done with Star Wars. So many people hate the way Luke was in this movie, and that hate is a passionate hate. Mark Hamill himself strongly disagreed with the direction Rian Johnson took this character.
Gee, I wonder why. I can't wait to see what your defenses are for it, since Cosmonaut failed to do the same thing last time. Considering this video's track record, I doubt you can do the same thing here.
Well, I am here to tell you guys that you're all nuts. Even though I completely understand a lot of people's criticisms, I frankly love Luke's story in this movie. Luke's arc in The Last Jedi is one of the biggest reasons why this movie is a top-tier Star Wars movie to me. Now, what are the major reasons why people passionately dislike Luke in this movie, and how do I see it differently? Well, I think I boiled it down to two major reasons. The first one is that Luke would never ponder murdering his nephew, and the other is that Luke would never abandon his family in a time of need. So let me address these two issues, and maybe I can provide you guys with a new perspective. First, let's talk about the hut scene with Kylo Ren. I'll say this, what happened here is incredibly similar to what I spoke about with Finn and Poe. Rian Johnson has some fantastic ideas, but it's not always entirely clear. When you take this scene at face value, sure, of course, Luke would never ponder killing his nephew, because Luke is a man that would always defend his family whatever the cost. This is something we can agree on. If someone threatens Luke's family, he freaks out. This is evident in Return of the Jedi. But what happens when someone in his family threatens someone in his family? When I watch these scenes, I pay close attention to the exact words Luke said. He would bring destruction and pain and death at the end of everything I love because of what he will become. And for the briefest moment of pure instinct, I thought I could stop it. When I see this, I ask myself, what could Luke specifically see that would freak him out this hard? What was in Kylo's future that would be more devastating than anything he thought possible? And it's simple. He saw the death of Han Solo. If you were to tell me that Luke had a vision of someone killing his best friend and then he would freak out, I would totally believe you, because Luke Skywalker freaks out when his family is threatened. If it were anyone else in front of him besides Ben and Leia, Luke probably would have murdered them. But because Luke cares for his family so much, he was able to stop himself from murdering his nephew. I simply cannot blame a guy for tapping into an instinct because he saw, as he said, the end of everything I love and the death of his best friend. This is some serious shit. So for me, it's that simple. I think if Luke saw Han being murdered, it totally makes sense he would react like this.
This is just your headcanon. As you yourself state, the dialogue's very vague, so we have no idea what Luke saw. So to try and push this idea like it's definitive is an overly generous analysis in order to make it look good. If we do indulge in this idea for a moment, this is still very out of character for him to do. I discussed this in my past video, but Luke in Return of the Jedi freaked out on Vader because he threatened his own sister by claiming that if Luke didn't turn, he was going after Leia next. And unlike Kylo at that moment, Vader is an immediate threat. And at the end, Luke still pulled himself together to prevent himself from killing Vader. If he was capable of doing that when he was much younger, it should have been very much possible for Luke to do the same thing when he's much older and wiser. Luke wouldn't threaten Ben like this, even if he saw a vision that Han was going to die. He would talk it out to Ben, trying to help him. And if Kylo was actually turning to the dark side, Luke should only attack him in self-defense as a last resort instead of attempted murder when Ben is at most already on his path to his dark side. And I don't even think Luke would have done this to Kylo even if he wasn't his own nephew. If he tried to do this on one of his other students, I and many others would still call this out as character assassination. Luke still believes in the good in everyone, no matter if they're family or not. If he was capable of saving Vader, he should have no doubt that he can save anyone. Even Luke says this later on in The Last Jedi.
No one's ever really gone.
But even when he talks to Kylo, he doesn't even attempt to save him. Unlike Yoda and Kenobi, Luke sees the value in empathy, which is something that the Jedi before him lack. Due to their strict adherence to their code about self-sacrifice and remaining disconnected to the world around them, they lack empathy for others, which is demonstrated with what Yoda said to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. Yoda, despite being old and wise, never understood this, and he led the Jedi order to their downfall to where by the time of the prequels, the Jedi had completely lost their way. But Luke set the Jedi down on the path that they were supposed to be after his journey. He allowed the Jedi to have relationships and connections because that's what saved the galaxy at the end of the day. So what makes him the best Jedi of all time.
Now, what I'm about to explain next is a total reach, I acknowledge it, but I'm not making anything up when I make this connection. All the pieces are still there. What Luke goes through in this moment is exactly what Anakin went through in Revenge of the Sith. 3 times in the Skywalker saga did someone have a vision. When Anakin saw his mom die, when Anakin saw Padme die, and when Luke saw Han and Leia in trouble on Cloud City. And you know what happened? All 3 of those things ended up becoming true. Luke must be aware at this point that when someone has a vision, those visions must always become true. Now, I'm sure that in some offshoot book somewhere, someone had a vision that didn't become true, but I'm only looking at the main movies. And in that case, every time someone has a Force vision, they become true. Luke probably knows this after studying for 30 years to become a Jedi Master. When Anakin had a vision of his wife dying, he did everything he could to stop it, but he ended up causing it to happen. His vision still became true. You don't think at this moment right here, Luke probably knows that his vision of Han dying is gonna become true? So not only is Luke freaking out over a vision of Han dying, but he is freaking out over a vision he believes is gonna become true. And you know what? Luke could have stopped it. If Luke killed Ben, Han wouldn't be dead. But Luke stopped himself and his vision became true anyway. Imagine if I told you that someone you love deeply would be murdered in the future and there was nothing you could do to stop it. How would you react? Now, is this all a reach? I'll let you decide. It's never specifically stated that Luke saw Han die, but for me, it's a reasonable assumption that causes a lot of things to make sense. If Luke straight up told Rey that he saw Ben murder Han in his vision, then a lot of people would be more accepting of the scene. But the phrasing, "the end of everything I love," is too vague, and thus the audience can't make that connection.
I actually see that even you admit that's too vague. Besides that, what you said about the visions always becoming true is wrong. First off, there's no way Luke would have known about Anakin's visions. You're just using your own meta-knowledge of the films and acting as if Luke would know that in-universe. The only vision we know Luke had by TLJ was his vision in Empire Strikes Back. So having just one vision isn't enough to fully know if it's always true. Speaking of which, there is nothing in the movies that supports that the visions are always true. Sure, Anakin's mother died, and Padme did die, but Padme did not die the way that the vision showed. The vision claimed that she would die from complications from childbirth, while she actually died from a broken heart. While some might argue that that's just semantics, it's not. The cause of death was very much different than what the Force showed. That proves that Force visions aren't always 100% accurate. Let's take a couple of scenes from Empire Strikes Back.
I saw a city in the clouds. Friends you have there. They were in pain. It is the future you see. Future? Will they die? Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future. I've got to go to them. Decide you must. How to serve them best. If you leave now, help them you could, but you would destroy all for which they have fought and suffered. You must not go. But Han and Leia will die if I don't.
You don't know that. Even Yoda cannot see their fate. but I can help them. I feel the Force.
But you cannot control it. This is a dangerous time for you, when you will be tempted by the dark side of the Force.
Yoda couldn't see their future, and Luke thought they were going to die from the visions, which didn't happen, so that would still be enough evidence for Luke about the accuracy of the visions, and that they could be changed. In fact, Vader even had Han tortured in order to draw Luke out, which Luke knows, so he's aware that visions can be orchestrated. It's a nice try to manipulate the movies to fit your narrative.
And you know what? Rian Johnson could have done a better job at conveying Luke's horror. And this is why Luke almost pondering killing Kylo doesn't bother me. When you consider the horror that probably went through Luke's mind, it all makes sense. And this ties into the other topic of discussion. Luke ran away and abandoned his family. This is simply not true. To say that Luke ran away is an implication that he was scared and just gave up on everyone. Luke did not go to Ahch-To because he was scared or because he just gave up on saving his family. Luke went to Ahch-To because he believes he and the Jedi are the problem in the galaxy. Even though it was only an instinct, he believes he is the reason why Ben Solo turned to the dark side. Luke exiled himself because he doesn't think he can trust himself anymore to do the right thing. Why do you think he's so depressed? There is nothing that Luke would want more than to be with his family, but he doesn't trust himself. But you know what? At the end of the day, Luke was wrong, and that is the point of his arc. When he talks to Yoda, that whole conversation is about Yoda teaching Luke that it's okay to fail, as long as you learn from it and become a better person. Luke was wrong about him being the problem in the galaxy, but he overcame that fear anyway. People who don't like Luke in this movie should talk to someone who accidentally murdered a person. It could be through a car accident, it could be through any means. I bet you if you spoke to someone who accidentally killed someone else, they would share the same sentiment as Luke. You think these people trust themselves to be around others? No way! When someone turns to the dark side, that is basically a death of the person they once were. So Luke, in a way, killed Ben Solo. Luke doesn't want to risk hurting his family any further. He loves his family too much to go back to them and risk their lives. Now, you may think this is all extreme and that I'm exaggerating, but we're talking about a man here that has fallen into a deep depression. You cannot tell a depressed person that they're overreacting. That's just not how it works.
So it's more risky for Luke to abandon his family and the galaxy be massacred and enslaved by Sith in the First Order? Even though Luke did mess up, he wouldn't run away from his problems and give up. Even if he is convinced that the Jedi need to end, he should at least make sure that the Sith are defeated first rather than exile himself, not while they're running rampant. And depression is not an excuse for Luke to be out of character, since the cause of that depression is his character assassination. Luke is known for being heroic no matter what the odds are. All the movies of the OT are examples of this, as well as the EU books, comics, etc. Having him turn into this is just flat out disrespectful to his character. And it's been happening to everybody these days. Indiana Jones, Master Chief, Superman, all these heroic icons are just made to depress bums, and the trope has been so overused as a method for creating character drama that I hope that one day it just dies in a fire until it's used on characters where it actually fits and is well written. Not this shit.
Old man, Luke ended up saving his family anyway, so he was wrong the whole time. Yeah, he was wrong. And that's the point of this whole movie. Every main character that I have spoken about at this point was wrong about something, and they had to realize they were wrong and grow because of it. Even if you agree with nothing I have said in the past few minutes, that doesn't change the fact that Rian Johnson shared a powerful message with Luke's story. Luke Skywalker to me was always a character who represented the best in humanity. He was a good friend, a good leader, and someone who believed in the best in people. The Last Jedi turns Luke into someone with severe depression, someone who thought they ruined their life beyond repair and that there was no hope, someone who thought that they would cause harm to others in their lives. And you know what happened? Luke overcame that, saved the galaxy, and inspired millions to rise up against tyranny. That's the point of the final scene in the movie. This random kid on Canto Bight who has the Force was inspired by Luke. Luke, in the most Jedi way possible, saved the galaxy. He showed up through his projection, and once that happened, not a single other soul died besides himself. Would it have been cool to see Luke take down all these AT-ATs? Sure, but is that Luke Skywalker? Is that a Jedi Master? As Yoda once said, a Jedi uses the Force for defense and never for attack. What would he have accomplished if he was actually on Crate instead of just doing his projection? Did you want Luke to kill Kylo? Did you want him to murder a bunch of people in the First Order? That's not Luke Skywalker to me. The Last Jedi teaches us that it doesn't matter how depressed you may be. It doesn't matter how many people you have hurt. It's never too late to do the right thing and come back from it. This is the message of Luke's story in The Last Jedi, and I love it more than almost anything that Star Wars has done.
Well, I covered all this in my Cosmonaut video, so just watch that if you want to know my counters to those. And how is it out of character for Luke to kill space fascists when he did the same thing in the OT? He blew up a space station with millions of them, for God's sake. So how is it out of character for Luke to kill the bad guys, not his innocent nephew? Nice to know you completely understand Luke's character. What a great video. Well, anyway, that wraps up my response. I know there's plenty I didn't talk about this year because I don't care. I agree with some of his criticisms he has against the movie, since it's just so bad that just about any criticisms against this dumpster fire is bound to be accurate. So that's another bad sequence events video out of the way. If you have any idea what I should respond to next time, just let me know. Anyway, that's all for now. This is Skids, signing off.